Welcome to video lecture on software architecture and design pattern. So we have discussing module 2 analysis of a system with use case diagram. So now we will continue with the previous video. The use case for renew the book. So this we have explained in the two column actions performed by the actor. Another column is response from the system. So this is the case table for renewable books. So the first member makes a request to renew the several books that he or she or any customer currently checked out. So the system response is nothing. So then clerk issue a request to the renew the book. Then system asks the member ID. So the here ID is the must for the renewable of the book. Maybe one or more than one book, depends upon the customer interest. The clerk enters the ID into the system. So one by one ID will be entered. So then system will start the process. So the response from the system here, system is going to process. System checks the member record to find out which book the member has checked out. If there are none, the system prints an appropriate message exit. If there is no thing will be there in the particular ID, so the system prints the particular message, nothing is found. So otherwise, it moves to the next step here. The system displays the title of the particular book. What is the title of the any book? For example, software architecture and design pattern. So checked out the member and ask whether the book should be renewed. So that again actions performed by the actor says if the clerk replies yes or no. So then system will be replying it attempt to renew the book using the general rule 4 and report the result. If the system displays all the checked out book, it reports that and exit. Otherwise, system again go back to the number 6 from the response from the system. Again it will continue the looping. So then clerk replies again yes or no, then it will go back to the response from the system. So this is about use case table of description of actions performed by the actor and response from the system. So next we are going to see that use case member transaction. So use case member transaction. So again here there are two columns actions performed by the actor. So the response from the system. In the member transaction, so the clerk issue a request to a get transaction details. So here the user ID is the must. So by that time, so the system is response which asks the user ID of the member and date for which transaction are needed. So usually date is required, usually day 1 or week or 15 days. So the duration is required. So from and to date, how many days may that is required for the transaction detail. The clerk enters the identity of the user and the particular date, which date he want to know the all the member transaction. So if the ID is valid, the system immediately output the information about all transactions which completed by the user in the particular given date, maybe the duration of the date from date so and so, all the details. For which transaction it shows the type of the transaction, maybe it is showed in the particular transaction details, book borrowed or return, or in case any hold or a hold particular hold placed it in the particular in the book ID and which the author or the title of the book, all details will be given by the system. So then clerk print out all the transaction which are customers required and hand them to the customer or the user. So this is the use case diagrammatical representation in the table wise member transaction. So in this, so we are going to end with this all the table like that column wise discussion in the use case diagram. So next simple exercise is given here. A hotel reservation system supports the following functionality: room reservation, changing the properties of room, for example, non-smoking to smoking or non-AC to AC. So the customer check-in and check-out. So this is the simple exercise. We can take it as an assignment. Come up with the system use cases for the above functionality. So should come out with the use case diagrammatic representation and table wise information. So next we will go to the, now we will discuss the next part is design and implementation. So as we have seen in the previous video, the design and implementation is very important role in the functionality requirement we had seen in the previous videos. So we know that once we design the part of the system, so very difficult to redesign. So whenever redesign is required, so it is the very complex part. We need to take it the entire analysis, requirement analysis and functionality analysis. So once we design, we need to implement it. So what we have designed. So very rare case that we need to redesign. So that redesign is required. There are the many software architecture design patterns are available. We had seen in the previous video where to take and how to take, in what situation we need to redesign. So that and all we have studied. So let us discuss with the design. During the design process, the number of questions need to be answered, so that we need to keep it in our mind. Whatever questions will be asked actually while designing. So not platform. This is the important things, hardware or software part. So where we are going to implement the actual software system. So where exactly the platform which the system run. For example, we'll run the development of just one platform. Say for example, Windows is running in 386 type uh, processors, or which will be developing for the other platforms such as Linux. So like that, where we need to answer it very properly. So that we need to keep it in our mind. So what platform is, platform dependency is very important to the design purpose. So similarly, the language also very important role while designing. What language or programming paradigms will be used for implementation purpose, what tool will be used, what are the latest technology will be used to implement the whatever we have designed the system. So what user interface, that is also very important to system provide, what are supporting of the user interface like graphical user screens, interface screens, printout, and for example library cards or other things. So these are the things we need to, there is a questions will be arise while or during the design process, need to answer very carefully. So in continued with that, there are certain these things we need to the question will be arise while designing the particular systems. So what the classes and interface need to be coded, and what are the their particular responsibilities required, how the data stored on a permanent basis, or what medium will be used. So usually how we are going to store the data in a permanent or a temporary basis, and what media will be used, how we are going to store the data in actually the what type of the disk drive or which media will be used, what model will be used for data storage, what type of the model will be used for the data storage, and in case of the warehouse or particular this latest technology will be how you can you use for the storage of data. So what happens if there is a failure of data storage, or ideally we would like to prevent data loss and corruption, how we can be recorrect it in the case of, so that and all we need to keep in mind while designing the particular system. So what mechanisms are needed to realizing this, how you can overcome in case if the failure or in the data corruption occurs, how you can overcome that, we need to keep it in our mind while designing the particular system. So that is the overall process we need to keep in mind when we need to answer it. We will use the multiple computers. If so, what are the issues related to data and the code distribution, and what kind of the computers or different type of the computer will be used for the, how you can issue, how you can issues the related to the data or particular code distribution among the system, that we need to answer in the particularly in case of data handling. So what kind of protection mechanism will the system use? How you can access control or the access, particularly access matrix will be, what type of the matrix protection mechanism matrix will be used? How we are going to protect the entire system? This and all we need to address in the while designing the system. So next, continued with the, we are talking about the designing the particular system. So we need to talk about, so there are some things, major subsystem. So we know that once we are developing the entire system, there will be the major system. We are going to divide into the different systems. So that is the major part. So the first step in our design process to identify the major subsystem. So we can view the library as a composed of two major. So this is the one example we have taken in the throughout this example. The library simple library management is the system. So there we have taken how we are going to if you consider as a library management is the entire system. In the design process we have to identify what and all the major subsystem. So there are two major identified subsystem. One is business logic and other one is user interface. So the now come to the business logic. So here actually which deals with a particular input data processing and data creation, and there are certain about the queries, data update. So actually this is a business logic unit, or you can call it as a module. What will do, it will be also the particularly responsible for interacting the external storage. So storing and retrieving the data, this is the very important part while we need to consider in the major subsystem of the library management system. So where very responsible for interacting with the external storage, how we are going to store the in external devices with a huge library management data, and storing and retrieving the data as and when required. So the next major system what we identified in the simple library management system is the user interface. So the user interface UI, the user interface is a subsystem which interacts with the user accepting and outputting information. So whatever we are giving the accept, and which will give the output to the information to the customer or client or any users. So now we will discuss the creating the software classes. So this is the next step in the design process. Once we design the particular part, after identify the what and all major subsystems, then we need to create a software classes among the major subsystems. So here the next step is to create a software classes. During the analysis, after defining the use case model, we come up with a set of conceptual classes, logical classes, and the conceptual classes or logical class diagram for the entire system. So that's why we need to create a software classes among the particular major subsystem. Actually, in this space, there are two major activities identified, or we found out the major two major activities. One is come up with a set of classes for the major subsystem, and assign the responsibilities to the classes and determine the necessary data and data structure and methods. So this is the very important. We need to come up with a set of classes. Another one is assign the responsibility to the classes and determine the necessary data structure, where we need to add all the primitive data structures and what and all the operations and methods. So that we need to take it as there are the two in this phase major activities we can consider as the major activities. So this is about creating the software classes. So next here, assigning the responsibilities to the classes. So once we have creating the software classes, how we are going to assign the responsibilities to the particular classes. So this is the next task. How, having decided what we decided on adequate set of software classes as the depending upon the phase or activities. So our next task is to assign the responsibilities to these classes. The one is ultimate purpose of these classes is to enable the system to meet the particular responsibilities specified in the use case, or what we use case analysis in the table wise what discussed. And it should be noted particular the sequence diagram which we are going to study in the next slide. So the sequentially how it can interact with sequence, that is called the sequence diagram, is the only concept or visual way. So which is a visual way representing the devolution, and we need to make enter our choices before design, before we start drawing our the arrows, how the arrows will be connected from one diagram to the another sequentially from one to another. So this is the, we can call it the visual way which we can easily understand how the responsibilities, how we are assigning the responsibilities from the customer or user to the simple library management and get back the response from the entire system. The entire system is the library management system. So next we will see the throughout sequence diagram of all the assigning responsibilities. Now the first sequence diagram for library use cases. So initially we know that, so whenever the user, customer or any student, they want to become the member of the library. So initially we had seen in all the previous these things diagrammatical representation, and in the use case table wise discussion, register a member. So the we had seen that in the table wise discussion, for registering member, actions performed by the actor similarly response, particular response from the system. So the same thing we need to take it as in the sequentially one by one, or that is called as a sequence diagram. So here the register member, the clerk issue a request to the system to add a new member. So this is the initial step. We know that in the manual method. So usually the customer or the student will go to the library and they need to uh, ask the clerk. Uh, uh, so that we need to become the member to the your library management system. So usually the customer asks that, or the user will ask the clerk issue a request to the direct to the library management system, that is system, to add a new member. So here, so what the system will do? The initially the system will respond immediately asking for the data about the new member. So the new member want to become the member. So usually the system will ask the details. What kind of details? So this is the simple things. We know that a name, student. If they are the student means USN number, or the customer identity, location, address, phone number, so and so. So this interaction occurs between the library staff member and the user interface at instance. So that is, the user interface will be there to the library staff and the system, so which will pass by one by and sequentially, and which will get back to the replay, so to the customer. The clerk enter the requested data from the system which the user interface accepts. So now let us see the details of the add member method. So this is, we can call it as a 3 steps algorithm. The algorithm here, which consists of 3 steps. The first step says that create a member object. So we need to create a particular member object. Add the member object to the list of members. And third step says return the result of the operations. So this is the very simple 3 steps method, so which we are taken into the create a member object, add the member object to the particular list of members, and return the result of the operation. To carry out the our this the first two tab, we have there are two options here. So here the first two steps is create a member object one, and add the member object to the list of members. We have there are two options. So these options are options one. What we can do here? So invoke the member constructor from within the add member method, that is the list method of the library. Here the constructor which returns the reference to the member object and an operations insert member. So that will be the insert member which is invoked on member list to add the new member. So this is the option one, to add a new member of the our creative member object and add the member to the member object to the list of members. So here option two is invoke and add a new member method on member list and pass parameters all the data about the new member. So the thing is, member list create the member object and add it to the collection. So here let us we can examine that. So what the purpose of member list class? So here, to serve as a container for storing a large number of members, adding new ones, and removing the existing one, and performing search operations, so that we need to use it. So we know that uh, there is the container should not or therefore concern itself with the details of a particular member, especially its attributes. So if you choose the option 2 here, add new member details of a member, or it must take in parameters that details a member, for example name, address, phone, so that it can call and a parameters that details of the member, like again including address, name, phone, so it can be a constructor of the member class, so which introduce, so which will tell that unnecessary coupling between the member list and member. So as a result, so if changes in case later we made to the member constructor, this will affect the member list. So even though the intended function of member list do not warrant these changes, therefore we are going to always prepare the option 1 to implement add member method. So this is the one of the very simple options. Invoke a member constructor from within the add member method library, then The constructor returns a particular reference to the member object and an operation then insert a member which is invoked to the member list and which will add the new member. So now we will see here sequence diagram for adding new member. So here very first diagram, that is the human symbol, that is the clerk, can call it as a clerk, then followed by one rectangular box, that is a user interface or user interface class, we can call it as a library class, then followed by member list class, and another member class. As and when required we need to create it. So another this candlestick diagrammatical representation, this is the timeline process. As and when from the user to and the system interaction, this timeline process will go, and here a right arrow of all the request we are giving to the clerk to the system, and another left arrow mark one-sided arrow, this is the which we have to uh, response or replay from the system. So here the first we know that adding a new member, usually customer need to give the information to the system. So here the add a member, so usually add a member request goes to the user interface, that system will ask that data request through the clerk, then clerk need to enter the whoever the customer or the user name, address, phone number, or any other details. So which will again will go to this library class. So the address of add, so the method will be used here, add member. So we know that when we want to become the new member in the library management system, so we know that that is the system is we're taking the steps, three steps algorithm. We know that create a member object. So their add member method will be add member object to the list of member. So add member method will uh, take all the member object, that is the member details, to the list of members. So here name, address, phone to the class library, and member of name, address, so which will be stored in the member object, that is the small classes we have created. So which will return the once the member object is created to the library. So here we need to take the variable, that is the boolean. So what we call the system response about this all those things here. The user interface role actually which interact with the user and not to perform the business logic, that we had the two subsystems. One is the business logic unit, so that is the major thing we need to see here. So we would like to retain the ability to develop. So user interface knowing a little possible about application classes. So here creating a member and storing it in the member list. So we are going to creating the member. So that is the add member method using with all the details, name, address, phone, and so that is the thing here we are creating and which are storing in the add member list. So here all that user interface need to do it pass the three piece of information that we had, name, address, we have taken here name, address, phone number of the applicant or the customer. So we know that as a parameter to the add member method, which always assumes that responsibility for creating adding the particular new member, so that will be stored in so the member list. So similarly, if we want to for the another person, the same process will be so going on. So this is the way we need to. So finally the result, so once the member is added, so here returns type the member to the library. So your member is because we have taken insert member of the boolean. Yes, inserted, then the result is fetching to the clerk, then clerk will tell to the yes, you have added a member. So this is the way to sequentially we are going one by one. That is called as sequence diagram for adding a new member. So the next we can continue with add books. And this is we had seen in the previous description. Add a book, so when the library staff they can add the books to the catalog. So whenever the scheme changes or depending upon the user customer interest. So in this case, when the request is made by the actor, the system which enters the loop, because add a book to the library is it depends upon the loops is required, because n number of book can be added. So depending upon the availability and usage of the book. Since the loop involves interacting repeatedly with the actor, that we need to take the loop control. Loop control mechanism so is in the user interface itself. So initially that user interface will have the looping control because we need to add a more number of books. So here the algorithm is very simple. Uh, the algorithm which consists of the three steps again, create a book object. This is the must because we need to add the book object will be created. Earlier diagram we have member object is created because member. So now second step, add the book object to the catalog. This is the another classes is the we have to create, that is the additional software class catalog. So book where we can add, that is the catalog is the book adding places. Add the book object to the catalog because a number of book can be added into the particular catalog. Return the result of the operation whether book is added or not. So that information sent back to the this thing. So this is the diagrammatical representation of a sequence diagram for adding a book. So here similar diagrammatical representation is the same user interface followed by user interface class, like library class, and then one more way I told that catalog, and we have creating the, so the book is the object where we need to add book to the catalog. So here, so add book data request. So add a book. So add a book. Again, we had seen all the diagrammatical timeline process here. Clerk, data request from the user interface. We need to add the title, author, because add the book we know that title must be there, author and ID. So in case of there is a same author, there are the more number of author. In case, for example, this software architecture and design pattern, Sarnath, Ramnath, Brahmadatta. So because we need to concatenate that author name should be taken. We had seen this is in the use case table wise discussion. So here we need to go title, author, ID. So add book method will be taken along with these three parameters is the important here. Title, author, ID is the must. Then which will be given sequentially adding to the library. Then library classes will take the book, is the book object will be created here. So which will return the what is the type boolean, insert a book to the catalog. So insert a book to the, so in this which is in the in terms of library, and boolean value will be taken. This arrow mark will be connected to the catalog classes. It indicates that whenever the book object is created, the book by object store all the details of the, in the add book details of title, author, ID. So that all details will be stored in catalog. So which here returns to the whether we added yes book, that result will be given to the clerk, yes book is added. So again, do we want to add more books? There is a question mark, yes or no. So this s indicates that the again the system will be in the looping. So that the looping will start here, and we had seen in the sequential diagram represent column as representation or discussion part. So whenever the loop enters, we will go back to the response from the system, maybe the step number 3 or whatever the repetition. So similarly here, this is the rectangular shape line mark we have taken this because this is the loop will start. So this is about the sequence diagram for adding book.